And again, hello everybody. I'm super excited to be here today. I know some of you personally, some of you I know virtually over Facebook and things like that. And I'm really excited to talk with you guys about Slovaktown, which is this small community in Arkansas that I only just discovered in 2022 and realized that the world needs to know more about this town. So I'm gonna share my presentation. All right. So during the, this presentation might be a little bit different if you've seen me present before. Because it's on Zoom, there'll be less like in the moment engagement with y'all during the presentation, and we'll leave that for the end where we'll have the opportunity for Q&A and things like that. So without further ado, let's get started. So, creation and preservation of Slovaktown, Arkansas. Erica gave a nice, oops, hold on, I need to be able to switch slides. Erica gave a nice introduction, so I will not do that again. But what I will do is share with you who our team members are. So we are comprised of all but one Slovak descendant or Slovak born person. James Ashley Mayer, who's down on the far right, is the non-Slovak. He's from Arkansas, though. He's from about 40 miles from Slovaktown. And then we have Pete Bella, who is down on the bottom. And we contract with him through Twist Creative Studios. And he's from Arkansas, but not Slovak. But we love them all so much. So what we're going to talk about is founding a Slovaktown, Slovaktown today, our preservation efforts. So a lot of you probably know a great deal about Slovak history. So I'm just going to highlight some of the points around the founding of Slovaktown specifically. So in 1848, serfdom ended in Austria-Hungary. That left a lot of Slovaks who were primarily serfs with a bit more opportunity, but also without land in the same way that we would think if you could just go and purchase land and have it right there for you. They needed money. They needed to figure it out. It was a hard time. In 1873, then the cholera outbreak occurred, which of course, whenever there's a pandemic or an outbreak like that, creates a lot of destabilization. From 1875 to 1890, there was Magyarization going on, which is, for people who don't know, is the Hungarian Empire was working to have everyone follow and become Hungarian, regardless of your own culture, your own ethnic group. They wanted everyone to speak Hungarian. And it was rather restrictive. They were trying to, for lack of a better way of putting it, wipe out the other cultures and have it be one group of Hungarians. And of course, the Slovaks and other groups were not fans of this. So what we ended up seeing was a lot of Slovaks coming into the Americas primarily. And because there was such a huge influx, as we can see from this old article, there started to be this questioning of, do we want Slovaks here? They're coming in, they're taking our jobs, we don't understand them. This happened a lot as several of the mines and factories had immigrants, often from Ireland, and they ended up actually taking a lot of jobs from Irish because the organizations were wanting to pay less, and the Irish had been here and moving up and unionizing. So there was a bit of dislike for Slovaks and other Slavic groups as they arrived. So that's kind of setting the stage of where we're at around the time that Slovaktown was founded. So around this same time, one of the immigrants to America was a man named Peter Ovianek. So Peter Ovianek came here to be a priest because he could not do that in his homeland. So, however, when he arrived, he somehow got really involved in journalism and felt like that was a much more valuable use of his time, that he felt he could really make things happen for his Slovak and other Slavic brothers and sisters. So he was the editor for several newspapers, started one of the first Slovak newspapers outside of Europe. And he has been, how do I put it? It's been said that he is one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the reasons that Slovaks have gained so much pride in who we are as an ethnic and descent group. Reason being is the written word really brought us all together and allowed for there to be a community, not only just in the little neighborhoods, but on a further level. So in 1890, he found the National Slovak Society, which still exists today. Some of you may know about it. If you want to get some life insurance, I don't work for them, but if you want to get some life insurance, they're an option. And they also the National Slovak Society also has a museum that they also operate as well. So these are kind of some of the things happening during this time. In 1891, there's the coal mines, and specifically coke mines, not coke like cocaine, but like one of the processes for around coal. There was a great deal of dissatisfaction, shall we say, because of the horrible conditions, the low pay. It was very dangerous for the Slovaks and others who were working in those mines, and so they went on strike. It was a very big strike. There were several strikes in this area. I should say Collinsville is in Pennsylvania. Also in that area is Moreland, which is part of the companies that ran the coal mines. So during these strikes, the authorities came in and massacred several Slavic people, and that is how the strike ended. You can see up here, there's kind of a depiction from a news article of what this looked like. The Slovaks and other Slavs were trying to burn down and tear down the factories, and they came in and were murdered. So we see below, there's one of the gravestones memorial for those who passed in the Moreland massacre. I do want to point out this isn't the only instance of something like this. There's several others. If you're interested, I can share some links with you. But this is the one that sparked Peter Rovianic to develop the Slovak Colonization Company to create a settlement for Slovaks so that they can have a actual home that isn't dependent on someone else, isn't going to put them into dangerous situations, but where they can have a community and very much thrive and do what they used to do, farming, community businesses, etc. So to the right is just something that we were able to find during our archiving for this project, which is an account of the history of the Slovaktown Colonization Company. So 1894 is when Slovaktown officially begins. So the colonization company purchased 3,000 to 5,000 acres. I say that because I found different articles, different research where that number varies. So it was a big swath of land. Slovaktown, as you see, is about an hour away from Little Rock. So it is near a bigger city. However, it is very nestled away. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Arkansas, there's a lot of small towns. I mean, there's different parts, but it's rather rural, and Slovak is very much in this very rural area. So they had to advertise this because it is very far from where the Slovaks were living on the East Coast, primarily some in Chicago. So what we see here is one of the advertisements that the Slovak Colonization Company put out. They're sending every month trains and helping to get people down to Slovaktown to try to build up this community, because really Rovianic was working to create Slovakia basically in America. So all of the advertising that they did brought in a lot of folks. And what we're looking at then is several founding families. There's said that there was an original 50, and then there was 300, and it just kind of kept building because they were coming from parts of America that they already had a community and that there were maybe some family and friends. There weren't really families and people coming directly from Slovakia to Slovaktown, because Slovaktown, like I said, was founded to get the people out of the dangerous factory situations that they were in and be together as one community. Like I said, he really wanted to unite Slovaks together to have a cultural identity. And so what we see is these different families that have shown up. I think right there in the middle, for those of you who are here early and listening to me and Annette speak, I believe that's Annette's family. So we have a direct descendant of most of these people here on the call today. So when all of these families came down, they spent their last dime. They didn't have a lot of money, but they saw this as their second chance at the American dream, because they did not feel they were getting what they were told they were going to get by coming here. However, when they arrived to Slovaktown, it was very different than what they were told. Here's a quote that one of the community members told me. There was a Civil War soldier who, after the war had ended, came down and did a survey of the Slovaktown area. And he said, quote, "It's swampy, mosquito and snake infested, and unfit for human habitation." So that's pretty strong. The pretty strong way of putting it. It is rough living down there. I've never lived in Slovaktown, but I did spend some time there during the summer, and I literally still have scars from mosquito bites. So the people coming in had swamps. They had prairie grass that was taller than their head, like 6 to 8 feet tall. And because of that, wildfires would sometimes just break loose. There's even a situation, and probably more, but one of the founding families, the Plafkans, their baby died in a wildfire. It came and got the house, and they couldn't stop it because it was open fields. There was nothing there really, so it just engulfed. So all of these people in the town were struggling. There wasn't the same type of soil that they were used to. Great soil in Arkansas. Arkansas is like agricultural heaven, really. But this part of Arkansas is a little bit different than the other parts. It's not bad soil. It's just very different because the water level of the water table is so high. I hope I'm saying this right. I'm sure there's one of the Slovak farmers here who can correct me at the end, but that you couldn't grow typical vegetables and crops and grains that they were used to. So a lot of people left. A lot of people who could said, forget this, this is too hard, we don't know what to do. There started to be some, how do we put this? Over time, what I've researched is there's been some suspicions of Peter Rovianek for this reason of Slovaktown, and also some other reasons, wondering what his true motives actually were. And I would wager he had multiple motives, like most people. We're all very dynamic and have sometimes values that are at conflict within ourselves. But the strikes that I was speaking of earlier, he actually worked against those who were striking, because he had a open ear to pretty much all of the Slovaks, or majority of Slovaks in the area, through his newspapers. The mine companies, factories of places that were striking in Collinsville asked him to tell the Slovaks to go back to work, convince them that it's a bad idea to strike, that it's not in their best interest. And they paid him. So he did it. So he was, although he ended up finding a place for the Slovaks to live, he found that place based on him going against the Slovaks, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I mean, what the true nature of this is, I'm still researching it all, but yeah, so there was a little bit of taking advantage, which then the Slovaks living in Slovaktown kind of were concerned they were being taken advantage of as well. So the people, like I said, bringing back to the people who left, sold their land back to Rovianic for a fraction of the price too. So it was rather disappointing for some folks then. However, the remaining families obviously survived. That's why we're talking about this today. And they did what a good, weird way to put it, but what a successful community does is they worked together and they figured out how they can survive on livestock, on the personal gardenings, doing some farming, but primarily they took advantage of the huge, tall grasses that were there and started to bale it. And they sold it to neighboring communities. Eventually, there was a train rail and depot that was brought down right through Slovak, and they would, toss the bales of hay on there, sell them, and they were able to make an amazing living. I know when I was interviewing one of the family members, one of them chuckled. They're like, "Yeah, we're descendants of grass farmers," and just chuckling about it. Like, imagine if we would have went to Texas, we could have been oil barons, but we're descendants of grass farmers. And of course they were very happy. These people that I spoke with were very happy that that's who they were. But it really speaks to this community that they did what they could and thrived. So when we look at Slovaktown, this is it from above as of today. Google image, right? This is the core center. So the idea with Slovaktown was that there was going to be a core village, and then on the outskirts, there's then all of the farms. So if you purchased land in Slovaktown, you got land in the town, and then you got your farm further out. The idea, you live in town, you farm outside, community happens here. Very much designed to try to mimic the villages back home. So here is the overlay of what Slovaktown's plot map looked like. So so this is from, I think, 1895 is when this was drawn, I believe. So you can see here on the bottom up, there's Rovianic Avenue, because obviously name it after the main guy. So when people arrived, this is what they had. Down on the far left, we have hay everywhere, wild grasses everywhere. Up top is the Dvorana, which was built by Rovianic and the Slovak Colonization Company. I'll talk about that in just a second. I just want to point out there on the right is the Kasurik Hardware, which is up in Hazen, which is the next community up, which is actually a Czech community. And we'll find out how the Czechs and the Slovaks actually and continue to work together. Okay, so here's the Dvorana, which in Slovak basically means like community hall. Someone may have a better translation than I do. But here's the ad that they put out and what the Dvorana looked like. It was rooms on the bottom for people and families who were moving to Slovaktown to live in until they finished building their own home. Top floor, so it was 2 stories, top floor was completely open because of course it was a dance hall. It was the spot where they all did what they did as a community. So from the very beginning, all of these families coming from different parts of Pennsylvania, some from Ohio, some from Illinois, some already knowing each other, but from the very beginning, they came together as a community and spent all this time together. It's pretty cool. I kind of wish well, of course, I mean, I love doing all of this. I kind of wish I was there to just see that. But I did read an article where it was talking about how the Dvorana was also offices in some parts for the real estate guys, and how it was ungodly hot, and that they would just be sweating, and just they were talking about how horrible it was being in this small tiny office, and they thought they were going to pass out and die just because of the humidity and heat that exists in Slovak, that exists in Arkansas, in the Delta down there. Eventually, the Dvorana no longer was used for its purposes, because the families had eventually moved into their own homes over the many years, and it became the National Slovak Lodge. Later, it became a school, the public school, for a short period of time. So the other piece that was there when the Slovaks arrived was Kocourek hardware. So there you see it on the left, how it originally was, and there's the current building that was rebuilt in 1907, I think, 06. So Mr. Kocourek is a Bohemian immigrant, and he came in the early 1880s to Hazen, which, like I said, was a Czech community. He fell in love with the area and was trying to, even before the Slovaks came, was bringing down Czechs to the area, saying that it was this great place that they can come and have a community. So of course, when Rovianic came, he met Kocourek, and they kind of teamed up to a degree. Kocourek would send out pamphlets. He would write all these articles about how this is the place to be for Slavs. And his hardware store was kind of that important hub for people to get their building materials, for all of the things they needed, maybe for feeding their livestock, for their gardens, etc. And so Kocourek's hardware store stayed open as a hardware store throughout the years, with his family taking over, until 2000 it closed. Currently, actually, because of its contributions to this area, it is now on the Arkansas Historical Registry, and is being redone, or not redone, but remodeled to preserve it and have different historical items in there for the public to see. So Kocourek and Rovianic are oftentimes seen as two of the main people that really helped make Slovaktown happen. So through time, we see, of course, the churches come in. There was a Lutheran church, a Orthodox church, and a Catholic church. So this is mostly where we can see where they are at. So the first church services were held in the families' homes. There were several families who served as the pastors. For the Orthodox, it was the Brasco family. For the Catholics, it was I believe the Donley and either Hooks or Liscos. I apologize, I can't recall. But they did that for years and years and years. The Lutheran church was the first church built, and I'm say church in quotes because it was just kind of like an A-frame structure that eventually was torn down in 1917, and one of the families just used the wood to build their home. So the Slovaks really had a sustainable rural lifestyle, which I feel they still do. So here are some of the original churches. So the first Catholic church was destroyed in a fire. Nobody knows how it started. I mean, like I said, wildfires happen, so that probably was the culprit. They rebuilt in 1914, and eventually tore it down in 1961. You can see on the bottom left where there's the two churches in the same photo. That is the Second Catholic Church on the left, and on the right is the one they built in 1961, which still stands today. So that's while they're in the process of building and transitioning. The Orthodox Church up there on the right, the first one was destroyed by a lightning strike, and they rebuilt. And in 1942, they some of the family members, the Prishlovskis, who were big in the church, the Orthodox Church, literally lifted the church up, moved it down the road to a neighboring town to give it to the St. Albans Episcopal Church, and it is still there today, being used as, I believe, their daycare. So kind of cool that they were able to give that to another community who needed something for their own parish. So 1904, this is where we start to see things turn around for the Slovaks. Mr. Fuller is a man who lives in Hazen. He's not a Slovak, but he goes to Louisiana to see a friend and discovers rice and says, oh my gosh, this could work so well because you need a lot of water to grow rice. And so he brought it back to the Grand Prairie, which is what the Slovaktown area is called, the Grand Prairie. And it works. It really flourishes. And all of the Slovak farmers in the surrounding areas switch to rice. And it becomes the mainstay of how they survive. It then is, I mean, honestly, the lifeblood. It's someone once said to me in an interview, I mean, it was Annette, like, I'm here because of rice. If it wasn't for rice, we wouldn't be here, because it really made this community thrive. And they found their role as rice farmers. These Slovaks became rice farmers, and that is what they did and still do. So if we remember back to 1920, there was some economic issues going on. By this time, there had been a rice mills that had come into the area, obviously, to distribute and support all of the rice. It was going under because of all the economic issues. And the Slovak farmers, along with the other farmers of the areas, made the rice mills a co-op, meaning they all bought it together as a community, and in my opinion, saved the rice industry for this area, because the producers' rice mill and Riceland are still there in Slovak Arkansas, and Arkansas is the #1 rice producer in America. So if you're eating rice, you are, I would say, 100% likely, okay, 99.99% likely to be eating rice that Slovaks grew. And that is something that just makes me so proud, that I'm like, I can't believe nobody knows. It makes me feel so, it's amazing to me that this community really helped set the stage for American agriculture in such a big way. So, Slovaktown, there's so many, they might be on the call, or still, the farmers there are still owners, it's a co-op. So we see then they switch to rice, and the rice mill comes in. It's further up, just outside of the town center area. They really start to hit the ground running, and they're thriving. There's a public school. They then eventually build a parochial school, and there's some switching around that happens with the schools, because, interesting story, the nuns ran and taught the public school, which is such an interesting thing to see, that a public school is run by nuns. Eventually, as the area began to grow, some people were like, hey, I don't want Catholic nuns teaching my kids, and that transitioned. But they also built Parish Hall to replace the Dvorano, so they have a community center much closer in, right there by the churches. And then we see all of these different markets pop up. You know, the community is becoming an actual town at this point. There ends up being, I think, 3 different markets that are the local hangout for everybody. It's the place where if you want to hear a good story, if you want to hear a good story, this is the place to go, because guys will just be sitting there after farming's done for the day, after church is over. Everybody would just go to one of the markets and sit outside and drink, even though it was a dry dry place. That wasn't really dry county, a dry area for Slovak. And one of the things that we also see, which is an amazing thing, I think, is a baseball stadium is built. And there's a lot of amazing stories, which our documentary goes into some more of the interesting, detailed stories, because I don't have time to go into all of that here, which is more just that overview. But the I can't remember the name of it, but the Arkansas traveling baseball team one time, just to share one, came to Slovak area, and the Slovaks were like, hey, play our baseball team, because they were just like, they would just go to the immediate surrounding areas. You know, they were like a minor league, the Slovaktown. And they played this more major team, and they won. And we all I was wondering, like, how did this happen? And everyone jokes like, well, because we were drinking. They couldn't handle alcohol like the Slovaks could. And also, apparently, there was a really good player that they called in from the market when they were down a couple of runs, and called him in for the market where he was there drinking and having fun, and that helped win the game. So there's a lot of interesting community stories that are very, very invested in just that community, that close knit. And I mean, I hate to say it, but us Slovaks know how to party and drink, and that kind of helps, was very present back then as well. So here's an up close shot of some of the markets. The market, so I'm trying to see, Minis was the last one that was still functioning and opening. The other ones was Sarani, and there was Melkovitz took over one. So here's a little snapshot of community life during this time when they were really starting to thrive. They had, you know, a lot of different events, and like they had a community band. They would oftentimes just have dances, like on a regular basis. They had the proper Slovak weddings that were going on, and here we see the baseball team, an earlier one, and then one as time kind of went on. Duck hunting, if you see these photos here, was something that came into the area, or has been in the area, and just had really prospered. And duck hunting is one of the biggest things happening in Slovaktown, and that still is. It's that surrounding area is considered like the duck capital of the world, I think they say. And like I said, the Slovaks really knew how to party. They had fun. The surrounding areas, the different towns, would speak of the Slovaks as the partiers. Basically, like, I had some people inform me that their friends weren't allowed to go to Slovak weddings because it was too wild. And if you've ever been to a Slovak wedding, that sounds about right. And if you look at some of these pictures, that sounds about right. So they knew how to have fun and still do today in a very proper Slovak way. So let's take a look at Slovaktown today. Here is that core center again. You see the church, where the trees right in front there would be where the baseball field was. To the left and down would be where some of the markets were. There's a lot of cars here because there was an event going on the day we took this this shot. So here we back are on the map. So as time goes on, things change, right? One of the gentlemen I was talking to earlier on here was talking about in Florida, where there was a Slovak community and people didn't want to stick around and be a farmer. That happened with some, not necessarily because people don't want to, but there's only so much farmland as well. If you have 3 kids, how do you divvy that up? You know, this happened in Slovakia. Some of that happened here. Some people just kind of disperse and move. So a little bit of that had happened over time. And so we would see the Lutheran church kind of go away because it couldn't sustain. Devrano closes down. Like I said, the Lutheran church, or I'm sorry, the Orthodox church, the schools shut down. But we do have the new rice mills coming in and creating a lot of opportunities as that begins to grow as well. So the churches change over time. The baseball team goes away, I want to say the 60s maybe. And we see then the new church come in, which is currently there, and the new hall, which is a very active part of the community. The hall has become, and the church has become that core meeting place. Where if you're driving down, one of these streets and you see a car or cars at the hall, you stop in because what's going on? Who's here? That's happened to me even when I'm there, even where people see my car and they come by and just like, hey, how's it going? And go into the parish hall and talk and hang out. It's very much a we're all family kind of community. So the markets, like I said, start to shut down over time because there's not enough really to sustain, and the other areas start to get bigger. You know, Hazen and Stuttgart, which is another surrounding town, have grown, and so people can get their resources out there. People no longer are having to ride their horse or walk to get to those places, and so markets are not as happening right in Slovak. And then one thing that we've started to see is that happening, all over the world is corporate farms are coming in to different areas and buying some of the family farms. And it's hard to compete with corporate farms. So a lot of the family farms are either not in the family, although many are, which we'll talk about. But it's hard to compete with corporation when you have a family farm, but they're still there, and an important, vastly important part of the community. But we have started to see that change over time. So here's Slovaktown today, the church. Amazing, beautiful church. There's the Catholic cemetery. If you see on the right, that stained glass has been put in the 2000s. The town's current pastor is Father Sean, and Father Sean is actually Czech, and so it's nice to have a brother Slav as part of the community and leading the community to the Catholic Church, which is the only church there now. So everybody from the other churches all kind of came together or went to some maybe that were further out. One dear, okay, here comes the tears. One dear, one of our producers who has since passed away, said to me, we're all one big Slavic family, and that's why it doesn't matter. We're all Slavs, we're all Christians, and we all came together into one church when we all needed to. And I thought that was very beautiful, because it was like that is to me the heart of this Slovak community from the start. Of we're all coming together into this Dvorano and staying and dancing together as we're all building our lives together. And even as things started to disappear, as the other churches started to disappear, open arms and welcoming everybody together because they're all family, literally and metaphorically. So Slovaktown, like I said, duck hunting is huge there. There's in that area, in the surrounding areas, everybody has a duck cabin. Cabin's probably not the right word, but and many of the younger generations, boys and girls alike, take part in duck hunting, and do duck calling contests occur down in that area. It's a huge business for down there. One of the things that is also huge in Slovaktown that blows my mind is the Slovak oyster supper. So the Slovak oyster supper started in the 40s, and it was started by a gentleman named Stanley Serrani. So Stanley Serrani is the descendant of the Sandaloks, who were one of the original families. He had the Serrani market and decided to do an oyster supper with him and his friends. There's more to the story how that happened, but that'll be revealed in the documentary. And it's been going on. This oyster supper has been going on since the 1940s, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it is now this annual event that is put on by the Slovak Knights of Columbus. And it is massive. I went last year to film, and the people line up outside and around, standing in line to get in, around this huge building, and lines of cars down the street to get this oyster supper. And Arkansas politicians come to it, not to do any sort of official fundraising. They're not doing any of that. They come to meet with the people of Arkansas, and they come to just spend that time with their constituents. When I was sharing this with Slovakia, everybody knows Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton's been there, because he was governor of Arkansas. So that's kind of like this very exciting thing for people to hear. Bill Clinton actually shared about Slovaktown to the president, the first prime minister of Slovakia, when Slovakia became its own independent nation. During their meeting, he discussed Slovaktown, which is really cool. Like I said, the farms, as you can see on the bottom, are still in the family. Arkansas honors what's called century farms, which are farms that have been in the same family for over 100 years. And there are quite a few in Slovaktown. And it is a great honor because these are families that are doing it. They're doing it with their kids. They're doing it with their brothers and cousins and sisters and all of that. So it's very different than if you were to just see workers out there who work for a company. There's love and blood in these farms. So Slovaktown, they are still doing all of those Slovak heritage things. They make kielbasa and smoke it every year. Like, I don't know how many pounds. It's a lot. Someone may be able to share, because I don't recall, but they all get together. Different families have different events where different families make their own recipes. It's such a big deal in Slovak that there's a couple, a married couple, the Bednar Konieczny's, who at their wedding had their separate kielbasa, and it was like at their reception, it was like, who's is getting more eaten? Which one's winning? And they were like almost battling at their wedding to see which family recipe of kielbasa was more eaten more. Excuse me. It's freaking delicious. I've probably eaten like 3 different families kielbasa. They're all different and they're all amazing. It's worth coming to Slovaktown literally just to eat the kielbasa that they make. The other thing that is huge is the Slovak baking. So the Ladies Altar Society bakes for every event, cooks, and they have many, 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 many events. They have a frog legs dinner. I think that one's for the fire department. They have just a spaghetti dinner for the church, I believe. They have, of course, for St. Cyril's Methodius, they have events for that, for Saints Day. They sell the baked goods to the surrounding area. The first time I went to Slovaktown, I walked away with a bunch of nut roll. Their freezers are full of this at the church. It is a thing that people around the area purchase, and it is known. Winemaking is the other thing that they still do in Slovak. It's muscadine wine. There's a red and a white version. This is members of the Hooks family. They've been making it for years and years, and it is delicious. And if you go to Slovaktown, they will give you wine. Yeah, it's really cool because it's being passed down the generations as well, and the vines that are there are being passed down as well. So these are some of the Slovak people today. As you can see, they're very proud of their heritage. They are very proud that they are still Slovaks. The community members are, as we can see, we got up in the left-hand corner and then down right below, thank God I'm Slovak. Those two gentlemen just had their 90th birthday. They are cousins. And then you can see there's some little ones that are proud and keeping their Slovak heritage going today. So let's talk a bit about that preservation, because we're getting close to the end. So I want to tell you about some of the preservation efforts that we've been doing. So when I first came to Slovaktown, I was given some information that had been compiled over the years. And one of the quotes on there was that community is not a location. It exists in the families of those who lived in a location. And it's the past that become a part of the future, as long as memories are held in the hearts of those who care. So this was Linda Uhiren. So Linda's a big part of why this documentary is being made, because when I went, I received from a couple, their name's Virginia and Joe Lisco. I had met with them and received some of her research. Linda had been doing research for years and years and years. And this quote made me realize how special this town is. And I was like, yes, this has to keep going. Like, it doesn't just need to live in the hearts of the people there, but in the greater Slovak story. We lost Linda as well. And so in 2004, we lost Linda and Betty Przyszlowski. And so that's a big piece of why we're doing this, is a lot of the elders are getting much older, and the elders are the grandchildren, the grandchildren of the founding families. And so they have direct memories from seeing their grandparents and hearing the stories. And we don't want for those to be lost. So Slovak culture isn't dead yet. We're keeping it going as a community effort between UpRooted and Slovaktown. Over the years, they've done a lot. Beth Hooks Lewis recorded memories from one of the granddaughters, Cecilia Sandalak. She did this for a college assignment. It's amazing what she uncovered. James Kennan Bednar also wrote the Guide to Slovak History. He did an amazing job of this. I've gotten so much research and things to help us move forward with the documentary. Like I said, Linda recorded a lot of the family history, and local newspapers over the years have recognized the importance and the uniqueness of Slovaktown and have been doing articles. Grand Prairie Historical Society, which is one of our associate sponsors, has published several articles written by the community members, as well as different priests from Slovakia and other places who came and visited in the 1800s, early 1900s. Frank Dobrovich has put together all of the historical records, from the nuns' records and the school records, to trace families together of who went to what school and how does this connect in with the greater story, as well as he's recorded all of the nicknames of everybody. Apparently everybody in Slovaktown had a nickname. I won't share any of them. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they're pretty funny and they will be in the documentary. Sorry, guys. And then recently, a couple of years ago, Father Sean and Annette Brasco and her husband got to brought a lot of the elders together to record their memories on film, and sadly, a great deal of that was corrupted on the storage and lost. We have, I think, one of the just a bit of it, but a lot of that was lost. So this town has been trying so hard over the years to keep everything alive and the memories going, and they really. I think they really hit it big when they started the Slovak Heritage Day in 2015. Who I had mentioned, Beth Hooks and some of her family took a trip to Slovakia. And they came back and wanted to share all of their photos and the things they learned about their family's heritage, because they found out information about their direct lineage there. And so they had an event at the parish hall where they just showed the videos up on the screen, and eventually let's do it again this year. And it's grown and grown and grown to what it is now today, which is this huge, I mean, huge is, but large exhibit of all of the families, the historical information set up all around. So every family member has a different booth where they're sharing photos, they're sharing information, different artifacts of Slovakia. They have a polka band, they have a Slovak meal, they do mass, and they invite somebody every year to present. I'm going to say her name wrong, and I apologize. Helena Sinsabo. A lot of people know her. I apologize for not saying your name right if you're here. She came one year. Bob Riechlik, who is the Fujara player, came one year and taught people how to play the Fujara. So it's really great how they bring this community together. People travel who've left the area to come back and just celebrate. So very excited this year. It's on Saturday, March 1st. And we are so excited that the ambassador to Slovak Republic to the United States is coming and will be presenting. So it feels really good to see that that Slovaktown is getting that recognition, that the ambassador is coming to that event, is going to speak, and is going to be able to get to see and participate in Slovak culture, Slovak Arkansan culture here. So if you want to come on down March 1st, Arkansas, it'll be fun. So other things that have happened, Milan Chupka wrote a bestseller book that includes Slovaktown in it, as well as other settlements. And like I said, we began the documentary process where we've been filming, getting a bunch of interviews, getting a lot of the surrounding community who, like the museum in the area, to be involved in this as well. So Slovaktown is still this farmland that has a very core community. And what we're trying to do to preserve it is also add something new. In our documentary, we're taking old folk songs and we are putting them together with rearranging them with Southern American styles. So bluegrass, and I was supposed to update this slide. I apologize, James, our music director. The Southern American styles is Delta blues is another one on there. We're going to have different instruments playing that are Slovak instruments and Southern instruments, specifically the dobro, which is a Slovak-American invented instrument that is used in country music that we're very proud of, because we found this instrument in the museum in Arkansas, and they had no idea it was a Slovak instrument. And so I'm going to play just real briefly. Hopefully we can hear it. James actually mayor in Arkansas, playing Morena. He rearranged Morena and is playing it on the dobro. All of our musicians are either from Arkansas or they are of Slovak descent or born in Slovakia. So we're very proud of making this a very Slovak project. We're also doing an archiving project where we're gathering all the information to have it on line for everybody, as well as we're sharing this with the world. We've done the interviews on Slovak radio. Other goals that we're looking at that people have mentioned they would love to see happen, will they? We'll see if we can, is getting some books out there, starting their own museum, and seeing about getting this on the registration. Lastly, I apologize, I'm running way long. That's the biggest problem for me, is just talking too much. These are our sponsors and producers. We're very grateful. And of course, all of this is in memory of those we've recently and in the past have lost. That is it. I apologize if we don't have time for Q&A. I talk entirely too much, but I appreciate all of you sitting here and listening to me. And that is it.
Well, thank you so much, Deah, again, for this amazing presentation. We will never not have time for Q&A. We've certainly got some extra time. I would welcome everyone at this time. If you've got questions, please either submit them in the chat or please unmute yourself and ask away.
Well, Deah, I hope if you have time, you'll take a look at the history of Slovaktown, Florida, where I grew up. If you substitute Slovaktown with Partak, you basically have the same story. So much overlap. Like you said, it almost makes me cry.
Yeah. Oh, looks like Kristen. Hey, Kristen asked how many people are in Slovaktown now? Somebody from Slovaktown, I don't know the exact number of how many families are still there. Anybody got a estimate? Slovaktown folks? No. I would say it's a couple hundred, right, guys? Yeah, probably a couple hundred, and it's not right. Most people live out on the farms now, because eventually, very early on, the community realized that it was kind of difficult to go back and forth between the farm and living right in the inner core area. So that's another reason why a lot of the inner stuff just went away, as a lot of people are now living out in the rural area. Oh, here we go. 140 to 150 maybe. Thank you, Sarah.
Will we see you on March 1st?
Yeah.
Good.
Of course. I will be there along with, of course, the ambassador will be there, and our goal, we will be there to take part, do a little bit more filming, as well as present our official trailer for the documentary.
We might have to build a new hall.
I know.
It's getting too big.
Say, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Ken Bombera. I don't think you mentioned, I'm kind of interested in like sort of where the Slovaks came from originally. Now, since he had bought this land and then advertised it, all the people had already immigrated.
Yeah.
Right? And so they kind of voluntarily decided to go to this place in Arkansas. Yeah. So I guess it really means that it wasn't an example of like chain migration where, somebody from the village comes and then brings everybody along. So do you have any sense of the sort of demographic breakdown in terms of where they came from?
I mean, it is interesting because it kind of was chain migration, but chain migration from like Pennsylvania. So like one family's heard and then they brought other families. Like there was one family, I think it was the Dobrovich family, he had health issues with respiratory stuff, and his doctor told him, like, you need to go somewhere, you need to get away from like industrial area. And he had a cousin who was living in Ohio, I think, who had moved to Arkansas and brought him down. So a lot of them were actually they would send letters and use like Jednota and things like that to try to find brides to come down to Slovaktown. So most of them were coming from these different neighborhood pockets in the industrial area of America. Some of them were sending from family that were in Slovakia because they were already here and may have already moved down to Slovaktown. But a lot of the families was Pennsylvania, Ohio, and there was a few Illinois of where people mostly came from. And guys from Slovaktown, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the areas of Slovakia where they originally came from was the Zemplín area. I know some families were from the big castle. My brain stopped working. That area where there's the very large castle in Slovakia that's famous.
Spiš, or is it?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay, really interesting. Because those are mountain people, and they'd be moving to the flatlands. Zemplín is flatter.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. And that's what the shock was for folks, is they were expecting, because it was billed as, this is just like Slovakia. And they came, were like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
There's nothing. And they were used to crops and surviving on farmland, because they didn't do any farming really in America when they were here before. They were used to what they had in Slovakia and came to Arkansas. And that's where they're like, oh, we don't know what to do here.
Well, you could make a slight analogy to SASW itself, because we're sort of in the Washington area, but pretty much Washington didn't really have, to my knowledge, any sort of indigenous Slovak ethnic, population. So that everybody here in Washington, D.C. area came from someplace else in the country or wherever, so it's kind of a funny, analogous situation. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was
We've
good.
got a couple other, thanks, Ken. We've got a couple other questions popping up in the chat. Helen, just a point of curiosity, where do they get the oysters for the oyster supper? I'm actually wondering about that too.
Yeah. So the stories that people have told me, and then people from the town jump in if I don't get it right, is I've heard that the oysters, the train was coming in. Somebody had oysters that they were coming in from Louisiana, and they didn't end up selling them. And so somebody bought them in Slovaktown. Somebody meaning Stanley Serrani, and was like, all right, let's have an oyster, let's do it. And so they would then, use the train to get the oysters every year. However that happened. And one person told me like they just found a sack of oysters on the at the train depot. I don't know if that's literally what it was. But now Riceland Foods, I believe, now goes down there and ships them up because they're one of the sponsors for this event now. And so, they're Louisiana oysters. Because Slovak's completely landlocked. So it's the weirdest thing to be like, one of the things that Slovaktown is most known for at this point is oysters, and they're amazing. Yeah. You can't get into this event, FYI. Tickets are all spoken for. I've been told you have to wait for people to pass away in order to get tickets. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, folks from Slovaktown.
That's wild. A couple other questions coming through from Kimberly here. Where is the archive located?
We are working on it.
Okay.
So the archive is in process. So two of our volunteers work at other museums, and they do archiving, and so they do that for us. They are my mom and dad. So this is very much a family affair, both for Slovaktown and for UpRooted. So that is our second project that we are working on once the documentary is done, is compiling all of that onto a website that is open for anybody. And what we're going to have in there, our goal is to have different sections of each family, because each family has a very unique history that the documentary goes into a bit more. And we're going to have, uncut versions of interviews from each family on that archive as well. So that is something that will be coming in the next, probably 2026 is the hope, because it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And a question from Chris. Oh, hi, Chris, in the chat. Where should a Slovak visitor to Slovaktown go? If they're, interested in, poking around the town? Is there a visitor center?
So no, that's one of the things that Annette Brasco has been talking about, wanting to make it happen. The goal is to have that Slovaktown museum where that is available. Currently, if people want to come to Slovaktown, come to Heritage Day. That is when you should come to Slovaktown, because one of the things that I can't stress enough is Slovaktown is Slovaktown because of the people. The people make Slovaktown the cultural community, amazing space that it is. Without them, there's no culture, So the center point is the church. That is the center point now. So when you come, I know there's been a lot of people who've just driven up and stopped in, and there's oftentimes somebody at the parish hall or at the church, and people been given ad hoc tours. But that's a question I would raise to someone in the community. It would be contacting the church. So coming to Mass on Sunday is an excellent way to really experience Slovaktown. They've been the thing about y'all in Slovaktown, they're extremely welcoming. They're so excited to share their heritage. And so if you come, I would recommend coming on Heritage Day if you want to come to Slovaktown, because that's where you really get to experience it. If you can't do that and you want to come at another time, there is, the church, the cemeteries. I have that map. That is a thing that we're putting together for the community to give out, that we'll also put on our website. So that people can see the different sites that are around. And so bearing in mind, a lot of this stuff has disappeared over time. And that's where we're trying to get historic, my hope is that we can move this forward, get more historical markers. So walking tours are possible. People see where things are, and there's an interactive nature to the history aspect of it. And hopefully that museum is a thing can make happen. There's also a museum currently in Stuttgart, which it's the Museum of Arkansas Grand Prairie is what it's called. And they have some really great options. In regards to if you wanted to come and stay, the True Hilton in Stuttgart is the best place to stay if you're staying overnight. Honestly, I don't know, y'all in Slovak, if you want to give someone a couch, who knows? But that would be where you would want to go, so you can kind of engage with the community. I hope that answers the question.
Good to know. Thank you. I think that answers a couple questions here, but there's two in the chat from Tom. One that's actually been on my mind as well. What are the demographics of Slovaktown, and what is it like in terms of the language? Do people still speak Slovak? Do you find that there's you lean toward one dialect or another, or?
So over the years, so Slovaktown, I would say when you think about the people who are in that area of Slovaktown, majority, most everybody's Slovak, by ethnic, Slovak or Polish. There's Germans because the Germantown is nearby. And so a lot of the Slovaks and the Stuttgart, right? Stuttgart and Slovak, they oftentimes married each other. So there's a lot of Slovak and German there. I would say that is the primary demographic. Then there's a few Polish. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is majority Slavic descent.
Mostly Slovak.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dennis.
Some Polish, some Russian, some Ukrainian, but mostly Slovak.
Oh, I see that. Great. I see this pop up age demographic. I think it's y'all. It's probably like an even mix, really. Would you say it's much more above 60 at this point, or what are we looking at in that distribution of age, guys? Any guesses?
I would still say there's kids, and I wouldn't say it's over 60. I would think it's just kind of the average community in terms of age.
Yeah. There's families, there's because it's all the same. Really, when we talk about it, it really is all the same families. The original families are there. There's a few newcomers, but Slovak is all of those original families, and they're still making babies. The Bednar and Konieczny's, who I mentioned, are both they got married and they're having a baby, now. So it happens that the community is continuing to be the community. So it's a long-winded answer from me and Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. And speaking Slovak, the language has been lost down there. Over time, they needed to be able, like we said, to interact with the outside communities, especially early on, to try to sell the hay, to get the resources that they need when they didn't have the full extent of resources that they needed. The Slovaks there was some bigotry towards the Slovaks even there early on, and so that led to a few people being, some people I spoke to talked about how there was people called them dumb and dirty Slovaks sometimes, and so there was a bit of attempts to acculturate to protect at the same time. So the older community members oftentimes will say phrases that they remember. Yaksmash has said various different phrases that they hear, that when I was doing interviews and things that they would hear. But a lot of the community is trying to learn again. And I just want to put out a plug. Erica, and hopefully encourage Erica, used to do a beginner Slovak that I participated in. And I'm hoping she wants to do that again for Washington.
I would love to.
So a lot of the community members have asked me, like, we want to Slovak, teach us. And I am very basic, and you don't want me to teach you. But guys, let's get Erica doing it and join DC Slovaks. It was a great, because the community wants to learn it again.
Okay, excellent. And I guess another one of my own questions, selfishly, how do you find young people are getting involved? I grew up in an area with a very heavy Slovak Polish presence, and I grew up, learning to speak a little bit of Slovak from my grandparents, but kind of got away from it until I went to college. Do you find that there's a renewed interest or a resurgence as kids get older, or?
Are you talking about Slovak specific?
Yes.
Slovaktown,
yes.
Specifically? I'll try to answer that, and then you guys fill me in. I think my impression for Slovaktown is, because it is so embedded in the community, it's like saying, when did I get more into the fact that I have brown hair? Do you know what I mean? Because it's just who they are. That's my impression of it. So it's always and it's always been a part of being in Slovaktown. It's literally the community is literally named after their ethnicity. I think that the Heritage Day event has really added a lot more renewal of it, and I think for the younger generation as well, where there's a bit more of, opposed to just being like, yeah, this is who we are, and like them knowing it. But my impression with talking with folks is there's been a lot of more pride and like, let's do it. And I think, Milan's book coming out, this cover So if you guys don't know Milan Čupka's book, it's in Slovak. Unfortunately, they're working on English version, but this cover is Frank Dobrovich, who is a community member who I mentioned. This is his dad. And there's an there's a chapter specifically about Slovaktown in here. So the fact that this came out really renewed a lot, I think, for the community. And I apologize if I'm speaking for you guys. I'll pull back, but I think this and Heritage Day and us coming out there has really jazzed people up even more, just because it's like, oh wow, we are unique. You're right. Yes, when someone notices who you are, I think that really brings it forward. It's my long-winded answer, guys. I'm sorry for speaking for you. Does anybody else have a comment about that for the young folks? About the young folks getting involved?
I know my son, he never grew up there, but when he went to the University of Texas, he majored in Russian and Eastern European studies. They didn't have a Slovak language class, but he took 3 years of Czech. So he can go through the Slovak cemetery and read some of the old grave markers that I can't. So he's taken that much interest. And when he and I talk on the phone, oftentimes he will bring up something he's been studying in the Prešov region. Kriviani is where our grandparents came from. So that area between Plavets, where there's a castle, by the way, and Prešov is kind of where they grew up. And he's always studying the territory, the names, and where did that come from. So he seems to be interested, but he's already in his 40s. So I can't speak for like 20-year-olds and what they might be thinking.
Right. I know that there's been several people from the community who are now also looking towards getting their SLA, Slovak Living Abroad certificate. A lot of the younger folks, because they came in 1894, the original families don't qualify for direct citizenship. So SLA is one thing that I know. I've spoken with some people in their 30s, helping them kind of figure that out. One of our board members and directors is a descendant of Slovaktown, of the Serrani family that I had mentioned, who started Oyster Supper. Her name's Amanda Vijamil Serrani. She lives in Costa Rica. Her family moved them, her grandfather moved them to Costa Rica. Very interesting story that'll be in the documentary. But she became, one of the things that happened for her and some of the other people that I've spoken to who are younger in Slovaktown is there was a lot of time on some people's hands when the pandemic happened, and it was like, and started researching that about themselves and discovering things. And I think the advent of not maybe specific to Slovaktown, but the DNA stuff has also piqued a lot of people's interest in that as well.
Excellent. I think we've got one more question in the chat from Tom. If I visited Slovaktown, would I know that I'm in a different culture?
Yes. I mean, it also actually depends on where you're coming from too. So the Slovaktown is a rural community. It's a farming town. I want to make that very clear, which I probably haven't before. If you've never been to a farming town community, it's very vast, very open, and you're not going to be able to go to the 7-Eleven because it doesn't exist, right? And so, in a sense, with Slovaktown, it feels like a Slovak Arkansan community. So what I mean by that is you show up and you see the Slovak crest all over on the church. You see the signs coming in that say, in Slovak, welcome to Slovak, and you will, if you're interacting with the folks, like I said, you will get served kolbasi, you will get halushki, you will get, cabbage rolls, you will get pastries if you leave. You will know that you are in a Slovak culture when you see the church, because like I said, the crests are all over it. You will know that you're in a Slovak culture if you sit down and eat with anybody there. The interest, when you go into the cemeteries, as Dennis was saying, there is the language there, written on, everything's, every name you see is going to be a Slovak or Polish name. So in the sense of, will you feel like you're in a different culture? Yes. It won't feel like you're in Slovakia. It will feel like you are in Slovaktown, because it has this very unique mix of Southern and Slovak cultures. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to do with which is in our nonprofit in general, is recognizing that us descendants of Slovaks are unique as well. We are a different culture of Slovak born, because we are also American who had the immigration experience. And depending on what part of America you're living in, there's a very different cultural aspect to that. So the people of Slovaktown, there are things as fellow Slovaks that Slovak descendants, we can relate to, because I'm a Slovak descendant, all of our, like I said, but I grew up in Illinois, and so I don't have that Southern aspect of my culture. And so there's a different feel, and I wish I could describe it better, but you actually have to feel it when you go there. And Heritage Day is the place where you can experience that Southern Slovak culture is its own very unique thing. And I often bring my husband comes with me, and I tell him, I'm his Slovak translator and he's my Arkansan translator, because the cultures are so mixed, right? And that's one of the things, like I said, about our soundtrack that we're doing, is we're trying to make it so that the folk songs and the Americanized, the Southern American sounds are being merged together, so that we can see and feel what this community actually is, which is emerging in a creation of a new, unique culture within two broader cultures. So that is a long-winded way of me saying yes, but it's not probably going to be it's not going to feel like you're walking into Slovakia.
Right.
The store that you showed earlier, mini store in that one slide, it used to belong to the Matuski family. And when the Matuski family owned it, it had a huge, long Slovak thing across the front. And someone's got that picture. You may even have a picture of it from someone.
Yeah.
But that's a good one to add to this presentation in the future, because it's got a long Slovak sentence across the front.
And I think the thing we're trying to do is bring back also to the community a lot of things that had been lost over the years, like that, what Dennis is speaking to, so that when you come to Slovak, you see the historical significance of it and what it is when you arrive. Because right now it is like I said, it's being with the community where you feel that different cultural experience, like the people.
Well, if they have brinza in the restaurants, then I believe it. Yeah.
There's, again, rural community, so not really many restaurants. At the dinner tables, at the dinner tables, there'll be Slovak, and that's there's a lot of eating and drinking that happens.
They must have sheep. They must have sheep to produce it. So you can't buy it here in the U.S. in Philadelphia.
No. There used to be sheep right over. There's some good stories about the sheep farms actually that were right by the church.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I was born in Bratislava, so I'm not a country boy at all. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you're tuning in. You're here now, though. Yeah.
50 years. So.
Yeah, one of our volunteers. Oh, she's from Košice. I apologize.
I would probably understand her.
I'm sure.
I do go back occasionally to practice my Slovak.
That's awesome.
Okay. So your Slovak is a little bit, my kids are learning Slovak, but
yeah, I'm extremely rusty. When I was coordinating with the ambassador for their event, I said, I'm like, if you come, I can speak to you in Slovak very poorly. I sent the email to his office, but luckily I'm hoping my volunteer who speaks, because I want him to be able to speak Slovak while he's there, but it's a hard language and
fairly useless. Except to speak to your parents and so forth. So, and you go back. Learn some other language. maybe. But not Russian, for sure.
It's a passion language, I think, for a lot of us, because it is about
Yeah.
who we are. And I think for one of the things that I love about what we're doing for this town is it is really creating this space of engaging more with it and making it so that it continues to live on, the culture and that community and its place in history, because descendants of Slovaks are everywhere. A lot of us have, outside of that core area of like, Pittsburgh, Illinois is kind of losing it a bit. The identity piece and the actual practicing and living in it is something like really want to see happen. And the language is a piece of that to continue. Language and food are the ways in which we express our culture in very felt and I think unconscious, for lack of a way of putting it, ways. And Slovaktown has been doing that for a long time, but with the food and with their celebrations and their honoring of their ancestors, the people in this town, oh my gosh, the history that they have kept. Y'all don't throw anything away. And it's been wonderful, because when I show up, like the amount of history and recognition of who they are and who they were is huge. And that, like that quote from Linda Uhiren, is what's bringing us forward, I think, for this community to make it even more present today, so that people have and are able to come to Slovaktown and for it to be what it was designed to be, which is a space for Slovaks. Whether it's just visiting, whether it's coming and learning about the history, or whether it is just being that community member and preserving that rural culture that was created, that is Southern Slovak heritage. I could go on and I'm going to stop, but there's something special, and I know you don't know it until you feel it. I spent the past almost 3 years about Slovaktown. It was Slovaktown in my life, because there's something very special when you meet the people there and you feel it. And I hope people can someday come to that Heritage Day event this year or another year, because it is a remarkable experience. I love it there, and I hope the rest of the world, from all the work that myself and the community and my team are doing, I hope the rest of the world really starts to see and can really appreciate the history and what it is, because there's something special about that area. I can't put it in words, but anyways, I sound goofy now. I'll pass back.
I think you may have answered Kristen's question in the chat here about what your what's behind your passion for this project. Kristen, I'm not sure if that answered your question accurately.
Well, I can share just a little bit more on it, because the actual process of this has been pretty wild. So Al Bednar is a 90-year-old man who is basically my grandfather now. He posted a picture of the Slovak baseball team on Facebook, and I was like, holy moly, Arkansas, because my husband's from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, like I said, which is, come to find out, 40 miles from Slovak. I showed it to my husband. I was like, have you ever heard of Slovak? And he's like, no. And then we realized, like, oh my God, like, it's right there. How do you not know this? And so we were going to visit his family, who lives up in northern Arkansas now. And I asked Al, I said, I want to come I want to see Slovaktown. We want to record and do a podcast about it. And I met up with his cousin and sister-in-law, and we recorded them. And that's when we received all the information. And me and my husband just said, there's so much here, we have to do something. And how warm, again, it's that feeling when we showed up, there was something about it. And that sparked that in us. And my parents, my grandparents, I've always known I'm Slovak. It's something that I've always been very proud of. I used to lie when I was a kid and say I knew Slovak language and make up words that I thought were Slovak but weren't, so it's a thing for me. And we've done other things with this, like we've done podcasts about different descendants who are trying to go back to Slovakia or reconnect with their roots. So we're the passion that I have is just seeing and telling everyone's story, because our ancestry and our heritage is a big piece, in my opinion, that makes up who we are. We learn from stories. Like, that is how humans learn and grow, and we're a species together. And our ancestors instill that in us, and it's up to us to continue and to develop who we are, because we are our ancestors. And that is something that we can share together when we have shared ancestry, us Slovaks. And that's something that we can have, we have different ancestry from others, because the telling of our stories, the telling of our ancestors' stories, to me, give a lot of life and meaning, give a lot of purpose and meaning into our lives, because it tells us who we are, where we came from, and if we so choose, where we're going. So that's where my passion is. If you guys can't tell, I'm a psychotherapist, and this is a lot what I do. And this community, I want to hear their stories, because it matters. Everybody's story matters. And I think everybody needs to hear the people of Slovak story, and for them to continue to tell it and live it.
Now you're going to make me cry. Yeah. Actually, one more question I think in the chat is someone's asking if you still need photos for the archive.
Yeah, yep, we do. We do. Can you email me? Whoever it is, I can put my email in the chat. Let me figure that out. We do, and that's the thing, because we're using the stuff, the photos and documents that we're archiving in the documentary, and then obviously, of course, for the archive project. So even once the documentary is over completed, if you still have stuff for us to archive, because that's like the other project, So yes, please send them. I will be, like I said, I'll be back in Slovaktown March 1st. I hope to see so many of you there. Of course, the people in Slovak, but I hope we've expanded the Slovak community friendships through this talk. Yeah, you guys got to stop me, because I will gush and gush and gush and gush and gush about this town and community. And so, like I said, Annette Brasco is her goal once she retires is to try to get a museum started up there. And, we're going to try to help Annette as much as we can for her to get that nonprofit going, because the world needs to know about Slovaktown. And yeah.
Well, you continue to amaze me with everything that you have done over the last couple of years. It's phenomenal, and we appreciate it so much.
And Deah, if I might say, on behalf of the Slovak Embassy and Slovak Ambassador, we thank you with our whole hearts for everything you do, for your passion, for your enthusiasm, for your proud about your Slovak heritage and about Slovaktown, about your roots. And our ambassador is very, very looking forward to visiting Slovaktown on March 1st with his spouse, Michelle, and greeting all the community and all the Slovak diaspora. So thank you so much. You're doing an amazing job, and we are proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanka. I appreciate that so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Unless there are any more questions here, I think that brings us to the end of our event today. As a reminder, we are planning on screening this documentary at our annual meeting at the Slovak Embassy here in Washington, D.C. That will be in person. If you are able to join, please, we would love to have you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Deah. Best of luck.
Erica, can I just jump in for a second?
Absolutely, Helen.
The meeting and the screening of the documentary tentatively planned for October.
Thank you.
And so if I can share, just not to freak anybody out in Slovaktown, we will be screening for you guys in August. You guys are the first to see it, so don't worry about